Hello and welcome. I'm Seth Manfield, and we're going to be playing some Arena. The deck is going to be Gruul. Now, this is a bit of a unique version of Gruul, so I'm gonna go ahead and go through it. In fact, Gruul has really picked up in popularity pretty recently. Mana base, pretty straightforward. We are playing Llanowar Elves. The newer versions of Gruul tend to have this card rather than be more red based for cards like Chain Whirler. So you see the 9 forests here, the 4 stomping grounds. So 13 ways to play a Llanowar Elves turn 1 in our deck. Also 3 Paradise Druid. So you'll see with these ramp creatures, we're really trying to go up the curve in a big way. Some Thorn Lieutenants, and these are the 2 drops. There's not any copies of Growth Chamber Guardian in the list. 3 Lightning Strike, essentially the only spot removal spell in the deck, but we've also got some Domries. So Domri is a really nice card because not only is it another ramp effect, but it is a removal spell, so you can fight with some of your bigger creatures, take out some of the opponent's creatures. So it's really just a great card in this deck. Force Gruul Spellbreaker, of course, one War Boss main, and then you'll see the rest of them in the sideboard. So, another interesting card about the list, 4 copies of Nullhide Ferox. So, Nullhide, it's a pretty high upside, being that it's a 4-mana creature that is a 6/6 that's really hard to deal with. There is also a downside to it, but it's more of just weighing the pros and cons, and the pros in this particular version outweigh the cons of the card. Just a huge creature, which is what this deck is looking for. And speaking of huge creatures, there's also 3 Ripjaw Raptor and 4 Charging Monstrosaur. So you've got these big dinosaurs at the top of the chain, as well as 2 copies of Nissa and 2 The Immortal Sun. So you may ask, you're playing the Immortal Sun in a deck that also plays Planeswalkers. Yes, that's true, but the fact is that it's normally going to hurt the opponent more than it will hurt us, and you also don't have to always play it out there. Normally you will want to, if you have the opportunity to do so, and the fact that it pumps up your entire board, draws you multiple cards per turn, it's normally going to take over the game. So looking at the sideboard, we've got some additional spot removal and Shock and Lava Coil. Some Krull Harpooners. Primarily, you'll want to board this in against decks with Lyra Dawnbringer, but it can also come in against Thief of Sanity, Mono Blue, a variety of flying creature decks. Legion Warboss, kind of an extension of the one in the main deck. This is a lot of the time going to be for your control matchups, an additional early creature that's going to attack your opponent. Thrashing Brontodon is primarily for the mono red matchup, destroying the opponent's Experimental Frenzies. And speaking of Experimental Frenzy, there are 2 copies, so we can play that game if we would like. And then there is 1 Vivian Reed in the sideboard. Let me go ahead and change that. 1 Vivian Reed. So that is a nice Planeswalker. It also kills Lyra. You do want to have answers to Lyra because a lot of the Esper decks are playing multiple copies of Lyra in the sideboard. So this is the deck. And I'm going to take it into the ladder right now. So I'll tell you right now that I am number 3 in the ladder at the moment that we're playing with this deck. So it's very easy to rank down, but we'll see what we can do. I'm going to try my best, obviously. And I like the way, with so much Esper, that's one of the matchups I feel pretty comfortable with in terms of this Gruul deck. So maybe we'll get paired against it. One of the more difficult matchups that I found is white aggro because of all of their creatures. So that's probably the worst matchup for the Gruul deck. So it kind of depends on the pairings a little bit. We're going to take the play. Okay, so this is a classic hand where we've got 2 lands. We'd be gambling to draw some more, either a land or like a Paradise Druid. So this is a pretty close hand, I think, but I am going to keep it. If we draw, you know, land, and are able to play Spellbreaker into Ripjaw Raptor, the hand is really quite powerful. And speaking of white aggro, Basic Plains means this is the worst matchup in my opinion for Gruul. So yeah, a little bit of an unlucky pairing, I guess you could say. Now, we really just need lands from here. If we draw lands and curve out, certainly we have. Ooh, and our opponent missed a land drop. Okay. Not only did they miss a land, but we made our land drop. We're gonna play this as a 4/4. Our opponent's pretty unlikely to have a card like Baffling End, so there's not that much removal that's gonna get rid of this right now that our opponent could play. And it seems like our opponent also kept a gambling hand. They did not get there, and we kind of did get there by drawing that land when we needed it. So here we definitely want Shocks, a nice cheap removal spell, and Brontodon is pretty good. We're going to take out the Legion War Boss and the Immortal Suns. Now, another interesting card is the Lava Coils. They're okay in this matchup. Like, I do think we should bring them in. To try to stop our opponent's early assault. And I'm gonna go ahead and shave some of the 2-mana creatures in one Monstrosaur here. So we are on the draw, but we have a turn. Having a turn 1 play is pretty important. I'm going to keep this. It's a very creature-dense hand, but that is kind of what you sign up for with playing Gruul. Fighting through that card, the Legion's Landing, might not be easy, you know? If our opponent just continues to make 1/1 lifelinkers, that's pretty tough. Because we don't have that many tramplers, just the Monstrosaur. And so it looks like, unless we choose to Lava Coil, which I don't think we're going to, I think we just play out the Thorn Lieutenant. Because that means that if our opponent does decide to make an attack with these 3 creatures, we can then block something, and we're at least eating one of the creatures, like we're going to kill it. And keep our Thorn Lieutenant. But if our opponent, say, plays a Luxodon here, then that's just pretty crazy good. If that's the card they have. Yeah, so that's really bad for us. Not many good options at this point. I think we want to just play out the Ripjaw Raptor. Our opponent's pretty close to having the City's Blessing, which is going to make the Snubhorn Sentries that much more annoying. But yeah, no really great options here. So they've immediately gotten the Blessing. So this is going to be a big attack, most likely, coming in. Now, The nice thing is the 4/5 body on the Raptor allows us to eat a 4/4 and then draw a card. Now our opponent's going to get to flip the landing. So say we block a 4-power creature and a 2-power creature, we'd be taking 13 and falling down to 6, which is pretty rough. That's going to be hard to come back from. Like, especially with the landing. And now if our opponent also has something else here, like a removal spell or a marshal, that would just be... There's no coming back from that, for sure. For some reason, our opponent decides not to make an attack in this spot. That would just be fantastic. That would be... I mean, they could have another... Venerated Luxodon, I guess. But I think you still want to... If I'm the opponent, I still would attack. Like, I would just send the team in, for sure. So, okay, so they opted not to. That's kind of odd. So, what do we do here? We can either play Monstrosaur. We can either play Monstrosaur here, or we can play Ferox plus Llanowar Elf. I don't really see another good option. I think it's just Llanowar Elf and Nullhide. That way we get two things into play, and we can later pay if we want to for the Nullhide. But our opponent's building up to this history of Benalia now triggering, so we're still in a really bad spot. Like, once again, if they attack with a bunch of things, they're forcing in a lot of damage. We see the blue, the Glacial Fortress, so possible that they have access to a card like Deputy of Detention. With the blue, we're not really positive on that. So I'm just going to Monstrosaur here. We're not casting the Lava Coil. Playing the Monstrosaur is just way, way better for us than Lava Coiling. And the nice thing about this spot is that we now have enough creatures so that we can actually, like, if our opponent Alpha Strikes and we make some, like, decent blocks, we then have potentially a big attack back. Now, the problem is that our opponent also has lifelinking creatures. They have the Legion's Landing. I would have taken an... If I was making the call for our opponent, I would have taken the earlier opportunity to make the attack. Now I think we're in a better spot. We're not going to be able to kill our opponent on the way back, because they would go up to... Even if we killed both of these, they would go up to 25, and they can make a token. So I think we're just going to kill the biggest creatures that aren't the Knights, because the Knights just have the temporary bonus. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and block all of the 4/4s and then one of the 2/2s. So this is gonna have us taking 10 and losing a Llanowar Elf, but we're killing 4 of our opponent's creatures. So yeah, this is not as good of an attack as our opponent had available to them earlier. Like, if they had just attacked in that earlier turn where they tanked and were roping a little bit, the turn where they played the history, I think they would be in a better spot, because they would have already flipped this Adanto and would have already started activating it. Now they're losing all of their best creatures, and they're forcing themselves into a position where they're going to have to go wide. Now, it is still possible that it's going to work. It looks like our opponent's opting to save a Snubhorn rather than kill our elf, which is kind of a close call. We are going to get to draw another card. We have this Lava Coil. That can take out the Snubhorn if we would like it to. So, yeah, that was a big turn. And it did go in our favor. So, we want to start attacking at this point. We can't just sit here with the Adanto in play. And we're probably going to Lava Coil the Snubhorn. So if we make a big attack, the way we get punished is if our opponent would find a Benalish Marshal off the top. But I think if we get in there with these and kill the Snubhorn, we have 3 blockers back. I think it's fine. And we're also just getting 15 damage through. Like 15 is a large number. So unless our opponent like top decks a Marshal or okay, well they did top deck a Marshal, so that's gonna make things more annoying for sure. Now it looks like our opponent is not going to attack with the 2/2 Vampire, which is a smart decision. Yeah, I was hoping they would not draw specifically Marshal that turn. Well, I think we want to... We're going to have to let our Thorn Lieutenant die. We're only taking 3, so we're still going to be at 6 with 3 big threats on board. So that's the good news. The bad news is that they found that Benalish Marshal. Llanowar off the top. Llanowar off the top, not the best. Now, if we attack with all 3 of these, it forces at least 1 block, and then we can play a Llanowar Elf post-combat, and we're not just dead on board. So I think this is right to just try to race. And we want our opponent to, optimally, they would just block the Ripjaw Raptor. Now they may put the just chump with the 2/2 Vampire and put that in front of the Ferox. It's an interesting spot for sure. Maybe I could have left one of these back, but then we don't force a block. So our opponent, if we leave one back, our opponent probably just takes the damage. So I'm not positive on that. So now we're in a spot where our opponent's at 6. We're at 3. Yeah, it's not looking great. But our opponents played this game pretty well. We can force a block on the Ferox if we would like. Yeah, I think we just attack with the Nullhide. Although I guess the problem with that is our opponent can just chump with the vampire. So that's pretty bad for us. I could attack with the Ripjaw, which is kind of like a... It would just be kind of a bluff to do that. What if we attack with all three? They still don't have to... They still do not have to block the Ripjaw. So the question is, if we don't attack with everything, can we actually win? And I think the answer is no, because they just keep Adantoing. Like, the reason why I've been making these aggressive attacks is because our opponent has the this Adanto, so I didn't want to allow our opponent to just have infinite time. So I think if we don't make these aggressive attacks, our opponent can just sit back and start activating Adanto, and we probably just cannot force through the final points of damage. So if our opponent just attacks with everything here, then we're just dead. Okay. Yeah, that was a well-played game by our opponent. I don't know if we could have won it. Like I said, I took the line where if our opponent draws specifically Marshall on that key turn, we were kind of in a bad spot. Also, another card we can bring in, especially on the play, is Vivian Reed. I think we probably want our Druid on the play as well. Go a little bit more top heavy. Nullhide's an interesting card because it's pretty powerful, but it gets if our opponent has a flip Legions landing, it gets chump blocked very easily, which is what we saw that game. So I think I'm gonna shave down on those. And then cut one Domri. Domri's good, but like sometimes you get into spots where you can't actually leverage it properly. In this matchup, like you may kill a small creature with it, but then it will immediately die the next turn. I mean, we're gonna keep this. This is a fine hand. We can shock into Lieutenant into, you know, it's reasonable. It's frustrating to lose a game like the last game because I felt like we were going to win. I felt like we were going to win that one. And then we did not. It was a close one. Like, it could have gone our way, maybe. But, you know, it didn't. So I have to bounce back and try to win this one. In probably Gruul's worst matchup. So we need more lands to be able to curve Ripjaw. You know, this deck just needs to hit its land drops. It's kind of one of the pitfalls to playing the deck. If our opponent was to attack with that 1/1, that would just be probably a misclick or something. I wouldn't really understand it. I think I'm going to Lava Coil here. Well, so if we Lava Coil, we can then shock and curve, like, it allows us to curve better. Could also just get in with the Thorn Lieutenant in that case. Now, The nice thing about keeping the Lava Coil is for a potential Benalish Marshal, if that's what our opponent plays. So I guess I'll just shock the. Well, we don't even have to do it now, but I guess I will. So I'm gonna shock that and just ship back to our opponent. Now Nissa isn't amazing in this matchup, but if we get to a stable board, we can certainly make good use out of it. All right, that's fine. I mean, we're getting some advantage out of this play, just getting to have our creature. I don't think Baffling End is actually that great against us. It does, like, your best target is basically the Gruul Spellbreaker. I think I want to get in there for one. Basically, the reason for doing this is our opponent isn't going to attack unless they have a Conclave Tribunal, pretty much. If they don't have Tribunal, this is just, yeah, it was just a free point of damage, more or less. So now we can play Nissa. I think that's just the play. I mean, it's possible that they have a Tribunal in hand, but our game plan revolves around Nissa. We don't have a stopping ground, so we can't.
I will aid you.
We cannot Lava Coil here.
Behold,
I'm just gonna make a
nature's true
3/3
power.
and pass. Okay, Marshall. That is manageable. The Aspirant is a problem now, but we do have the Lava Coil to deal with it. Okay, now we're in a lot of trouble. Interesting that our opponent would attack with the Loxodon. I'm okay with trading off the Ripjaw here for it because it allows us to draw an additional card. We need more cards to win this game, and we probably need to stop the Legion's Landing from flipping. So this is a pretty good opportunity to get another card. We're gonna just kill the Marshal and start trying to do something. Need to top deck something like a Vivian Reed or a Thrashing Brontodon to get an enchantment off the board would be fantastic. Now our opponent does have 3 creatures again, which is fairly bad news for us. Although the Ripjaw was not a bad draw. Like we can play Ripjaw, and that gives us a nice blocker in the spot. If our opponent does decide they want to try to force through the Legion's Landing, flip. Okay, well, that's bad for us because now the 3/3 isn't gonna die, but we're gonna block it. We're gonna get to draw 2 more cards here, and if they're decent cards, then we have a chance. Like maybe a removal spell. Okay, removal spell plus like another spell. Okay, so that's not the worst. We probably want to attack on the ground. Yeah, I'm gonna attack with the Ripjaw and Mountain and see what our opponent does. Okay, so they opted to make that trade. We're gonna now commit to our next 2 cards to the board. It's just if our opponent top decks, another cheap card, that could be the difference in this game. This is a razor close game. Yeah, that's a good top deck because it allows our opponent to have this 1/1 and activate a Danto, but this was also a good draw. So I think we just attack with everything. Now, the unfortunate part of this is that our opponent can just start chumping the Ripjaw Raptor. They can also block these Paradise Druids, which is probably what they're going to do. I don't know that there's a good way around that happening. So they're probably just going to block those, and then we're going to have to hope that they don't draw any more gas. Okay, so they're only blocking one. Not sure I really understand the reasoning for that, but I think it's probably good news. So we're gonna, ooh, that's also a problem card. So the Sky Marcher is gonna hit us, and we need to draw something again, basically. Nullhide Ferox. Okay. So what happens if we attack with everything? It forces our opponent to block 2, right? They would have to block 2 creatures. So yeah, we just attack with everything here. Play this Nullhide. And I think our opponent should have protected actually the 1/1 Vampire with the Dauntless Bodyguard. Because protecting the Sky Marcher Aspirate, while it does play around removal, does not make these... our opponent's going to lose 2 creatures here, no matter what. And the math is so close. Like, they fall to 1. Or no, to 3, but they're allowing us to draw another card. Okay, interesting. So we get to play this Nullhide. I think our opponent needs to top deck here. They need to draw a spell. Oh no. So sick. Oh, so sick. I mean, that was about as close a set as there is. I think that I played this game pretty good. Not sure about game 2. It sucks. So, yeah, bad matchup, but still clearly very winnable. Very, very, very winnable. Alright. So with this deck, you're going to have a lot of these close decisions on attacks. And it's going to be a lot of combat math in those matchups. Like if you're 1 point higher or 1 point lower in life total, it can make all of the difference. Which is what we really saw in that set. Like our opponent needed to draw a couple running spells at the end there. I thought we set ourselves up pretty well in games 2 and 3, but what can you do? Okay. This hand is pretty solid, I would say. Pretty solid. And our opponent's mulliganing to 5. So any threat here is what we're looking for. Any creature, planeswalker, pretty much the cards we want to draw. Okay, that's pretty good. It's not an early card. Like, Paradise Druid into something like this would have been perfect. They have an Erasure, so they're going to be able to take one of our creatures, which most likely they will just select either the Ripjaw or the Monstrosaur. Now, I don't think we're rushed to start lightning striking. They might play a card like a Narset, a Planeswalker that we would want to lightning strike. Okay, not the most exciting draw. But the fact that our opponent mulliganed to 5 should still be working in our favor here. Well, we drew Monstrosaur. I think I'm just... I guess there's a chance they have a D-Spark. Like, the highest upside choice is to jam the Monstrosaur. I'm going to go with the other line. I think it plays around a D-Spark better. And if they just play Little Teferi, we can still kill it very easily. Alright, now, Oath of Kai killing the elf is... It's a little bit annoying. But we have so many good draws there. Like, either a land or just another creature, so... Most of our deck. Drew the Nullhide, which... There's a good chance that this just puts the game away from this stage. I think we're just monster soaring. Like, our opponent cannot afford to take all of this damage. Yeah, they're just dead. So, we are playing against Esper. We have to be a little bit wary now. Our opponent can have cards like Kaya's Wrath, which is just something we have to be thinking about. We want the War Bosses. The Frenzy. Frenzy can be good. Same with Vivian, can be good. The Lightning Strikes are... they're not that exciting in this matchup. The Druids... We can cut a little bit on Druid. Ripjaw is a card that is not super exciting. And then we want our Crawl Harpooners in case of Lyra. So I'm just gonna I'm hedging, cutting some of the mana acceleration. Because of the Wrath effects. Like, the mana dorks are a way for you to kind of lose cards if multiple creatures get swept away. Whereas a card like Legion Warboss is a standalone threat that your opponent has to answer. So here's a tough hand, right? Because we have no green source. Like, if one of these mountains was a forest, it would be an easy keep. As is, we're just going to ship this. Keep our 6. Keep that on top. So we have a Frenzy hand. So we can try to utilize that. Pretty good curve of Elf into Domri, into Elf, into Frenzy. We can play out all of our stuff if our opponent doesn't disrupt us, which naturally... They had the Tyrant Scorn, which sets us back, but we'll see what our opponent like. If they kill this, clearly we're just Domrying. Now, an alternative is to just play the Frenzy out. I don't mind that either. They could have, in fact, I am going to do that. They could have a D-Spark, but it's just a pretty high upside line. Like, if they don't get rid of this, unfortunate, but like, it's just so high upside if that doesn't happen that way. Alright, well, I'm gonna null hide now. Like the Domries are good, but can be a little bit awkward. Just another D-Spark, I guess. Cast down, okay. Some of the control lists do play cast down. So the way our opponent's playing, oh, so they're playing they are playing hero. They're not playing a full-blown control variant of this deck. We can Domri, and we're just gonna. We can't kill the hero right now, unfortunately.
Nothing disgusts me more than law and
We're just
order.
gonna play out this Paradise Druid. And that's gonna, yeah, put our opponent in a bit of an awkward spot, it looks like. They're missing double black, which could be a factor. I think I'm going to just play out this Vivian Reed.
Let's see if you're worthy.
Alright, so they had another
Not
D-Spark.
again. No one knows the wilds like
I'm
I
gonna
do.
see what we find before deciding how to utilize this turn. Like, we could fight Druid and Hero, or Llanowar Elves and Hero. The question kind of comes down to which creature we want to take. I think I'm gonna take the War Boss. And do we go for the fight? I think we do. I think we just let Llanowar Elves and
There'll be
Hero
nothing
trade
but
off.
dust when I'm done.
I could have sequenced it differently, but like now our opponent doesn't have D-Spark mana available. So I don't think that's a trade we want to make. We're going to let Domri go down a little bit. Monster Sword is pretty interesting. I still like War Boss here, though. Well,
What's
I guess
that?
our opponent
Something smells
could
rotten.
have a
Wait, that might be me.
they could have a Scorn or like another spot removal, but yeah, I think War Boss is the way to go. Okay. Looks like they don't have immediate removal. So the question is, what do we want to get in with? And I'm just going to get in with the 2/1. I mean, if our opponent has a multicolored spell, they're definitely incentivized to play it. They did have a Scorn. I think that's a mistake, though. Like, they had the card that they needed to have, but I still would have played it before allowing us to get that Goblin. Now, the Thought Erasure is going to take away our Monster Sword, so yeah, not the greatest of sequences. Like, I'm kind of wishing we had Monster Sword last turn, but it was hard to be sure that this is how things were gonna go. So Domri's gonna die,
Oh,
but we have another one
and no hands.
we can play. Still not great for us.
Oh, I look forward to seeing you running
I guess
away.
I'll go ahead and kill the hero.
That's the sound of a stampede coming straight at you.
But this is what I was saying with Domri. Like, sometimes if you get behind on board, we didn't know our opponent was playing the hero version of the hero version of Esper, but this is when things can get kind of rough.
Put me back in.
Wow, and they've drawn, how many heroes have they drawn? 1, 2. This is the third one. All right. Well, they have 2 cards in hand. I'm just gonna start trying to get a little bit aggressive and see what happens. Monster Sword, like, there's not that many cards our opponent can answer a Monster Sword with. Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. Oh, they have Lyra. Okay. Yeah, so Lyra's gonna probably take this game down. Now that our Domries are gone, we have no way to fight it. We needed there something like a Crawl Harpooner. I guess we have one more draw step potentially to find it. All right, game 3. So interesting that our opponent is playing the hero version. I think on the play we want the additional ramp creature, another Paradise Druid. But we're not doing that much, honestly, differently than the previous game. Also on the play, we're not as worried about heroes. Like, we're more likely to be able to use a Domri to kill a hero on the play. I'm not gonna board in more removal against it. Like, say we opt to go Thorn Lieutenant into Domri, that just kills a hero if our opponent plays one on turn 2. Now, we may not want to do that, but it is an option. Yeah, I guess I like the lieutenant because of that sequence makes it worthwhile to me. Multiple appealing choices here, but I'm just gonna Domri.
Where do you see my mates? Oh, have at
Like,
it,
Domri on turn 3 is pretty sick. Oftentimes, the opponent will not have cards like the Elder Spell to deal with it. There's not that much that actually deals with it here. They're probably just going to take away our charging Monster Soar. Like, Monster Soar is, yeah, easily our most important card in this hand. Oh, hello. We're just going to play that one.
I was raised by wolves.
So good.
I've also just been big dogs.
Our opponent is in a spot where they need a Kaya's Wrath, but even if they have one, they may still lose. Like, there's not that many cards that they can play here to get out of this, and they may just scoop it up. I don't know what their hand is. Also, if we draw a land, we can pump Thorn Lieutenant. Just going Domri plus and pump. So if they Wrath, we just unload Okay, well, they're dead on board. Oh, no, they're not dead on board. They gain 3. But they're dead to the Spellbreaker. Which they knew about. So that was just a really, really nice draw on the play. It's weird how because I'm at such a high rank, when I lose a match, I go down 2, and then when I win, I just stay at the same spot. So yeah, that's what happens. It's okay. Alright, so we're going to keep this one. Like, green is the most important color to have in our opening hand, especially since we have the druids. They can make red for us. And we're probably going to Druid turn 2. Unless the reason why we might want a Thorn Lieutenant on turn 2 is if our opponent is playing mono red, like if they're playing a Chain Whirler deck. Oh no, is this white aggro? Okay. It's a tough matchup. We'll see if our opponent has that nutty draw of 1-drop into 2 more 1s, or 1-drop into a Danto Vanguard. Those are the really tough. I mean, anytime the white deck is on the play against you, it's pretty rough. So we're just going to play this Paradise Druid, hope to draw another land next turn so we can play 2 spells, like we can play, say, Strike plus Druid or something like that. We could also just play out the Spellbreaker. It's a 4/4. Which blocks this board relatively well, but we're kind of just dying. So not too many good options. I guess I will just play this out. If our opponent has another good spell in their hand, we're just dead. Like, alternatively, we're playing a 2-drop and lightning striking, but then they just get in with the Danto Vanguard, so yeah, that's gonna be good enough. So So we want our Lava Coils, Shocks, Thrashing Bee, and Vivian Reed. Taking out the Immortal Sun. Some of our Null Hides come out. Good news is that we're going to be on the play here. We're going to keep this and just gamble on trying to hit that second land. Yeah, that's a pretty decent creature against us. I'm fine with trading off a shock for it. Hopefully no Adanto Vanguard. Okay. It's pretty reasonably good turn for our opponent. So we didn't have a 2-drop. That's a problem. If they have a Benalish Marshal, we're just gonna lose. But they don't.
Hit me again.
Or they could have, rather, but they might not have had the land for it. So one line we could take here is Ripjaw. Ripjaw followed by cashing Domri in, and then we would have another Domri. I think I like that. Like getting a creature off the board is pretty nice.
My wild beasts will bring your command.
And we get a card out of the deal because it's a Ripjaw Raptor. If this was not a Ripjaw Raptor, I might not make that play. But because we get to fight away our opponent's threat, I think it's worth it. So this is kind of a difficult turn. Like, we can just play Monstersaur and try to get very aggressive. I think that's the plan. Like, we get in for 9, put our opponent down to 10, and then we have another Monstersaur. So we, depending on what they do, like, they can't just necessarily tap all of their creatures for a Luck Stun, or else they may just lose. Alright, so they're keeping one creature back. I think that's definitely smart. But we're still gonna just Monstersaur them pretty hard. Yeah, I'm just gonna play the Monstersaur. Like, they may just chump the Ripjaw, I guess, and then they would go to 1. Well, our opponent doesn't have great blocks. They're going to go ahead and double block, which is also good for us. We can just Lightning Strike to finish the job on the next turn, which should most likely work out. Or they're just dead to the Monstersaur Ripjaw. So we've got a game 3 on our hands. That's what that means. we're much more disadvantaged being on the draw, but don't think our plan is shifting that much. The white deck can also just not have, you know, the 1-drop into 2 more 1s or the 1-drop into Danto Vanguard. A lot of the game is just going to depend on also how good of a start our opponent has. Like game 1, they just had a really, really strong opening. So our opponent's really taking their time here. Sorry for the hold up. Obviously, it's not within my control. So we did board out 1 Domri. We got 2 in our opener. Still going to keep. If we draw the 3rd land on time, we're probably going to need to draw land 3 on time as part of the... But we're going to have 3 draw steps to find it. We get to turn 1 shock into turn 2 lieutenants. So I am going to take this out. I don't know why our opponent's saying oops. There's nothing wrong with Law Rune. Law Rune Enforcer is pretty good in this matchup. And they have a good draw, so we really need this land. This is the game might come down to whether we can find the land. Which... Lava Coil is not, in fact, a land. And this is the perfect turn for a Loxodon. If our opponent has a Loxodon, it's just going to be sick. So sick here. Yeah. Wow. I mean, we can take out one thing, but we're not coming back from this, unfortunately. That's sometimes how the white aggro games go. Like, it just comes down to how good of a draw your opponent has. And our opponent just curved out beautifully. We stumbled. Had we hit our 3rd land drop, I think it would have been a game. Because we could have played Domri, killed a creature, then we still would have had a Thorn Lieutenant on board. But there, no, that just wasn't working in our favor, that game. Okay, so this is an awkward hand that I think we're supposed to keep just because this is not a forest. Like, if the Rootbound Crag in this situation was an untapped green, the hand would be significantly better. As is, we just have to start with basic Mountain. But I think we can... The curve is still okay. Like, we can still go Lieutenant and then play Lieutenant plus Elf next turn. And they probably just take the Monster Sword because it's by far our most powerful card. But we can just win the game with these Thorn Lieutenants at the same time. So they're going to take a lieutenant. That actually makes some sense, but we found another one, so Mize. I don't think we're playing around a Wrath. We're just going to get these onto the board and see where it goes from here. Now, pretty straightforward situation. For us. But it's going to be hard for our opponent to actually answer this stuff without a Kaya's Wrath. So they've had now Erasure into Kaya's Wrath. Domri probably not getting us out of this one.
No, I can't. No, I've lived with animals my entire life. Explains a lot, actually.
But we're going to play it just in case we draw the Immortal Sun. The Immortal Sun is probably the card that gets us out of this. If we were to find that, this would give us the 6th mana source, so we could play it and be in a pretty decent spot.
Ooh, right on my noggin.
Okay. Well, we're going to cast that.
Through this land, we are all connected.
Go ahead and... I think we're just attacking to Fairy. And then we can...
I won't let you win.
Oh no, we can't. Sorry, we cannot take out the Basilica Bellhaunt because our Domri's only
Oh, have at it, boys.
on 1 there. So we'll tick it up to 2.
Hold that thought.
Still not in a great spot because our opponent has so many cards in hand. We have to expect that some of those are going to be problematic for us. So Little Teferi, that's probably just going to bounce the mountain. Yep.
That's more like it.
And now they're going to get a clean attack on one of the Planeswalkers. Interested to see... what our opponent does with the Basilica Bellhaunt here. They also might hold it back. Like having a blocker is definitely relevant. Oh, come
No,
on.
I'm not finished with you. Not by a
Come
long
on.
shot.
I mean, yeah, that's game. So we're going to board similarly to how we did in the other Esper match. Take out our removal, take out Ripjaw Raptor, and then take out some of the mana creatures. We saw the Kaya's Wrath. We know that our opponent may have access to the full 4 copies of Kaya's Wrath, so definitely a card we have to be... We will try to play around if we can. The last game we really couldn't. Not with those Thought Erasures as well. Like maybe if our opponent had a different style draw. We could have done something about it. Okay, yeah, this is a good hand. We have a turn 2 War Boss. That's gonna come down and really put the pressure on our opponent. So we may just have a fast enough draw where we're just gonna try to even win before our opponent has the option of untapping and wrathing us. So I'm just gonna get this in with haste and just deal, like, this is just so much damage. Like we may just have we do have the turn for kill. We have the turn for kill. In fact, our opponent's dead on board, plus we have a Nissa. So we don't have to show the Nissa, I don't think, because this is 6, 8, 9. Yeah, our opponent's they're just dead. So this was our nut draw. Interesting that our opponent had Narset in their deck, especially on the draw. That seems questionable, in my opinion. Okay. So the nice thing about the Druid is our opponent can't just immediately kill it. And then we're gonna have a choice as to how we want to kick things off. I think it's just Domri.
I look forward to
Now, a real
seeing you
question is,
running
do we get
away.
in there with the Paradise Druid? Because that does give our opponent a window to use a removal. But I think it's fine if our opponent gets rid of this, because then it means, like, they're trading 1-for-1 with the Druid. Okay, like, that's going to open up the door for our other bigger
They can only
threats.
punish you if they catch you.
So that's good for us, I think, to use, for them to use the cast down there.
Trust me.
In fact, we can just Monster Soar. The Monster Soar is insane in this spot. I don't think I'm gonna Nissa, even though Nissa's good here.
They can only punish you if they catch you.
Yeah, Monster Soar just immediately getting rid of Teferi is pretty nice. So I'm just gonna do that.
This is hardly my worst defeat.
So we can. Yeah, I guess we Nissa this turn.
They can only punish you if they catch you.
Power surges through these lands.
I'm gonna make the mountain into a 3/3. This way,
Be wary of the ground.
even if our opponent Wraths, if we still have these Planeswalkers in play, that's gonna work out for us. Now, if they go Despark into a Wrath, I think we're still potentially fine, but it's just a bit annoying. Okay, so there's the Wrath. We still have access to 4 mana.
to no one.
So we just get to play 2 more dudes. Reload. Okay. That's pretty strong. I guess I'll just play... Well, the problem with the war boss is that
We won't answer the other
our opponent might just have a removal spell for it. So this could be a reasonable frenzy turn. Like they might their 2 mana up might just be a spot removal spell. Yeah, I think I'm gonna frenzy this turn. Because frenzy can take over the game as well, as we've seen happen before, whether it be this deck or other decks.
Oh, I wish you could
Just
see your face.
essentially drawing us multiple cards per turn. They may indeed have a cast down. So I think that's been in their hand. So had we gone War Boss that other turn, it would have just gotten cast down. I mean, that's a bit awkward. We're just going to be in on Frenzy, though, at this point, I think, which is fine.
We won't answer the other guilds.
Monstersaur on top, huh? I think we're just gonna haste this thing.
I bow to no one.
Frenzy's not like it doesn't win you the game quite as quickly as in a deck like Mono Red, but it can still just a nice grindy way of finishing the game, and our opponent has seen enough. So we saw pretty much two different stories there, right? We saw the Esper matchup, how favorable that can be, and then we saw the white aggro matchup, and that is a spot where we're at a bit of a disadvantage, I think. And this is going to be the last one, so we'll see how this goes. Last match. Yeah, this is another awkward mana hand, but we're going to keep it. You know, I think I might have played against this player already, but sometimes that happens. Can't control the pairings. So we get to see white aggro, and we get to see the Esper matchup. Two of the most popular decks in the format. So I kept the Llanowar Elves alive there. I think we want to just go ahead and jam this Nullhide. We don't have any... We don't have any, like, non-creature spells in our hands, so the Nullhides... I think they're okay in this spot. Gideon Blackblade. So we're gonna try to get rid of that. If we draw a land for Monstersaur, we can probably just take it out.
I believe in you, friend.
And if our opponent doesn't have any, our opponent doesn't really have good attacks there. So We can Spellbreaker and just attack both at Gideon. That would likely get rid of the Gideon. But it's more of a matter of how much of an issue is it. Like, we can also attack and force a chump and then play Nullhide. I think I like that better. Like, our opponent's definitely going to chump here. Like, the really nice thing about the Nullhides is that they're just super tough to deal with because of the hexproof. And it's a 6/6, so really not great attacks either, even with the Marshal coming down. Okay. So our opponent might attack with 3 creatures. No, oh. Ouch. Well, that's pretty good.
I believe in you.
Yeah, that was a pretty sick turn. We're gonna send some attacks our opponent's way. I guess. So we could attack both at Gideon, which kind of guarantees taking Gideon out. I'm just gonna attack with 1 though. Our opponent probably will block with the Luxodon. Yeah, they are going to block. It's not the Gideon that has really won our opponent this game, though. I mean, they've just had a great curve, which is what the white aggro deck can do. To Gruul. So they are ticking up. Our opponent alternatively could have just cashed the Gideon in to take out one of our threats. They're probably going to flip the Legion's Landing this turn. No, they're just attacking with Gideon. Okay. So having this Nullhide back ends up being pretty important for us. It's just a delicate dance. Wow, that's just gross. Okay. Yeah, we're just gonna die here. Like, I can play Ripjaw, but that just gets tapped. I'm going to send these Nullhides in at the Gideon.
I can
Yeah, so
take a hit or two.
would... This would just tap the Ripjaw Raptor. Or the Monstrosaur. So I guess I'm just playing Lieutenant and Llanowar. I mean, if they tap Lieutenant, it's good, definitely good for us. So they should not tap. Yeah. Not tapping is definitely correct. Now they're gonna tap. Yep, they're gonna tap the Spellbreaker. Get in for a big attack.
Your light will cleave the darkness.
So, not much we can do here, unfortunately. Like, we go block, block, block. But, no, there's no way out from here. Not gonna mulligan. We have the turn 1 shock, the turn... I mean, it's a fine hand, right? We're never mulliganing this. I just feel a little bit unlucky to have gotten paired against white aggro 3 out of 5 matches, but it's definitely, it gives you a good idea of how the matchup plays out. Our opponent's on the mull to 5, so now that they have mull to 5, I feel favored in this particular game. They're on 4? Okay. So, yeah, we are now a heavy favorite to win with a pretty good hand and our opponent on 4 cards. Just gonna shock that. Trading cards is great when your opponent only has 3 of them left. There's that annoying Legion's Landing. And it's not impossible for our opponent to win this, but it's... Okay, yeah, that's actually probably the best play for that turn our opponent could make. Like, if they have something like a Conclave Tribunal in the hand, that could be bad news. But we're just going to slam the Nissa.
Seek shelter in my stewardship.
Because if our opponent does not have a Tribunal,
Conquer you.
they're just going to lose to Nissa, I think. So it looks like they did not have one. Game 3. We need one more of those mulls to 4. That would definitely help our chances. Easy keep. We have a turn 1 elf. We have a removal spell. Took most of the Nullhides out of the deck, but still one found its way into our hand. So we'll see what it can do. This is interesting. So we can just take this trade because we have a druid, and the aspirant is pretty good against us because it flies. So I'm just going to go ahead and make the trade. Just easy druid for this turn. Now this is probably going to be a history. Yeah. We could just Brontodon to get rid of the history. I don't think that's correct. I'm just gonna play Nullhide. Fairy Time Raveler, that's interesting. That could bounce our druid.
I've got
Or the okay, they're gonna bounce their own history. That is a strong play. Well, I'm gonna try to take out the Planeswalker. I don't think they want to block. Yeah, they're not going to.
It's only a matter of time.
I'm going to play the Brontodon because it's a 4 toughness creature which defends us against a potential Benalish Marshal. Of course, our opponent might just have... I guess they did have the Baffling End. Okay. So we've got to be fairly worried about what's going on here next turn. I think I'm just gonna play this Monstersaur. We want to leave one. We want to leave one creature back. For sure. The question is which one. Clearly it didn't make sense to play the Monstersaur there pre-combat. But it's not going to be relevant. It's still the same outcome. We have to start trying to pressure our opponent, even though it's bad. Like, they can just have a removal spell here. They're probably just going to attack because they have a Legion's Landing to flip. Oh no, they're not going to attack. That's interesting that they would not attack that turn. Very surprising. So we're gonna start our defenses. I think we want to lava coil. Oh no, sorry, we can't lava coil. What am I saying? Because of Ferox. We're not gonna lava coil. That's what I meant to say. Clearly, we're just gonna pass. And it's gonna be interesting to see if our opponent attacks, because if they just swing here, they're losing a lot of their stuff. Wow. That is a really aggressive attack. Really aggressive attack. So I'm gonna block like so. We're gonna kill a lot of stuff here. Yeah, that was a pretty. I'm surprised by that attack our opponent made. Let's put it that way. So we can lava coil one of these if we would like to. We could attack with everything. That would be. Yeah, I think we're attacking with everything. I guess I'll lava coil first. But I think that was a bad attack that our opponent made last turn, and it's probably going to cost them. Like, this is 15 damage. We're just going to attack. If they take it, I don't think they can take it, but we'll see. Like, they can make a 1/1 and play a Marshall, and we still would not be dead to that because we're at 6. So this feels like a pretty safe attack. And I think that's game over. Yeah. That was not a great all-in move the turn the history came off its 3rd chapter. So ended up making it to 4 in the end. Went 3-2 in matches. Sorry, everyone, if you wanted a more diverse set of matchups. I'm just playing on the ladder. So that's gonna... I got white aggro more often than you might on average, but we got a really nice feel for the matchup. You're disadvantaged, right? But it's not unwinnable. And then on the other side of things, Esper is a pretty good matchup, and there does seem to be a lot of Esper running around. So, yeah, this is a new version of Gruul, and definitely try it out. Thanks for watching.